So good morning, everyone. This is Crystal Kennedy. We're meeting with the Community and Economic Development Committee, and today is December the 17th. And Mandy, if we could start with roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
Miss Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar? Miss Salatel?
Here.
And then for non-members, Mr. Rivera? Mr. Perez-Verdia? Miss Allard?
Here.
Miss LaFrance? Chairs, you have a quorum.
All righty, thank you very much. Okay, well, we've got a couple of things on our agenda today, and I know we want to spend some time on particularly trying to get through the marijuana revision changes. So anyway, we'll get started though with our marijuana establishment application review, and that is on, I'm hoping I'm saying this right, Ganja Guys of Alaska. And if you could kick us off with that, Mandy, with the licensing, that would be great.
Yes. So this is an application for a new retail marijuana license. It's Ganja Guys of Alaska. Mr. Mark Ha is on the line for any questions. So for the license application, all of the general license restrictions were addressed in their operating plan. There were no taxes, fees, or fines found due. All of the safety and security requirements were also addressed in their operating plan, and the retail license specific requirements were addressed as well. There were no issues from any of the other reviewing departments reported to the clerk's office for the license application. There will be final inspections, of course, required before operation. So no additional conditions were recommended for the license.
Thank you, Mandy. And then we'll move on to the land use permit, and that I'm assuming would be Ryan, but I don't see him on here. But Ryan, if you're with us, yes, you are. Yes, Ryan, yeah, please go ahead.
This is Sean Odell with planning as well. I'll read it. It'll be my case. Ryan is on here as well, so we can answer
Thanks, Sean.
questions.
Go ahead.
So this is Ganja Guys Retail, and it's a request for a special land use permit for retail sales within the I-1 district. The site's located northeast of the intersection of East International Airport Road and A Street, and the proposed establishment will be located. It's an existing commercial structure. And the licensed premise area is approximately 3,126 square feet. They propose to operate 7 days a week from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. And on November 23rd of 2020, the planning department mailed 95 public hearing notices. There were no public comments received. The Midtown Community Council submitted comments to the planning department stating they are neutral on the marijuana application. The site has non-conforming rights for a lot of the landscaping, parking lot, site perimeter, and site enhancement. They are showing sufficient parking. They're showing an accessible route to the front entrance from the street, and the planning department recommends approval of the special land use permit subject to the conditions that we put it in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sean. Mr. Ha, thank you for joining us. I'm going to open it up to questions by the members, so please just kind of stay tuned there because you may be the one answering some of them. But anyway, let me open it to the members. I do have Mr. Gates that has a question. So Dean, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I haven't been actually looking very carefully at these applications lately, but I happened to look at this one, so I had a question. I see that on the packet on page, the checklist document, page 2 of 14, the bottom of that page from 1080 through 71, both yes and no boxes are checked. And so I think that maybe there's a mistake there.
Oh, yes, I see that.
It should
Okay,
just be yes, right.
that's the one. Yeah, the very last one. Prevention of botulism.
That is a clerical
Yeah,
error that
should-
when they are
should
in
there be a correction?
compliance. Yeah, so that needs to be, the no needs to be unchecked.
Oh, in A. Okay. That's
So
all,
is it-
thanks.
Is that something then that you all can handle before it actually goes before on the agenda? Well, it's on the agenda, but can it be corrected before Tuesday, or do we have to do that on the floor?
So I can work with the agenda team and we will work to swap out this page for the corrected one. So I believe the packets have already been printed for the assembly members. So the ones that will show up in your binders will have this error, but the permanent record and the ones provided for the public online will be the correct version. So we'll get that corrected so you won't have to do anything at the meeting.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything else, Mr. Gates?
No, that's all from me. I guess I would note one thing, actually. We don't see this often, but we have condition number 3 on page 1 of the AR. A condition of approval under that section. We usually have them for land use. And so I would just note that we need to have some taxes paid as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Okay, Mr. Weddleton.
Well, thanks. Mandy, did you, there was a note on the taxes due. Was that taken care of?
It was. So I don't know how that condition got placed on there. The checklist is correct where it says there was no fees or fines found due. They did have some originally, but they did get those taken care of right away.
Okay. I had a couple points on page 4 of the staff report, and this is for Sean. It says, it's kind of talking about the accessible sidewalk, and it goes from East Diamond Boulevard. So it looks like a cut and paste kind of issue there.
Yeah, that's apparent. It would be from the International and A Street there. See. Okay.
Maybe get with Mandy in the corrected
Okay.
version, do that. Then on page 9 of your report, can I go through a list, Crystal?
Yes, please.
Okay, you can give me the hook if I'm going too long. Someone else wants in. So, and then it says religious assembly, approximately 500 feet. Separation distance. I mean, are you confident that from their door to the closest religious assembly, it's more than 500 feet?
It is more than 500 feet. They listed that in their application. I could get an exact number for that if we need. And I can put that in.
You're thinking it said property line or property line, which would typically be more than the 500 feet. So did you guys go on measure, or are you just relying on?
We just Google and
Just Google it.
ArcGIS. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it sounds plausible. If you're not, but if 499 is not 500 feet, so.
No, it's further than that.
Okay. Okay, and then the Midtown Community Council had a comment that I don't think was in our packet. It'd be nice to see that if you could just add it for our meeting.
Okay.
Then and this is kind of a minor point, but maybe some confusion, but I think, but on page 8 of 52, so this is the applicant's thing. Its letter on its community meeting called it a community council meeting, but it was really just a community meeting, I think, right, at the location. I suppose that's for Mr. Ha.
Yeah, that would be a question for Mr. Ha. That's his within the vicinity of the Midtown Council.
Yeah, that letter was sent to Ryan's office and approved, and that's what we used.
Okay, but it wasn't really a community council meeting. It said community council. It was just what we call a community meeting where you held it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then just a little odd, but I guess these things catch me. It's on page 21 of the application. It said, kind of in the section called Appendix A Site Plan, there's a phrase that says, note that the site will not have one freestanding sign location shared with other tenants. But the state application says that you will have a sign on a shared pole. Is that just misphrasing there on page 21?
That'd be a question for
Will
Mark.
not. Right. I think it should say, it should not say will not. It should say will have.
Yes, it will have.
Okay. I don't know if you need to correct that or not, but then to kind of looking at your store layout. So Mr. Hall, this would be questions for you, I think.
Sure.
And well, maybe staff too. You have is your main entrance must be that shared entryway. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because and then there's another one on the south side, but there's a door shown. And will you be using that?
Yes.
Okay,
That
but
would
it's for
be
customers.
no. The customers will all be through the front door.
Okay, so then looking at the parking, and this would be for Sean, it has a handicap parking close to that south door, but not to the main entrance. And is the handicap parking supposed to be the closest to the main entrance?
That'd be, I think it's the closest accessible. However, the traffic engineer signed off on it, so they took a look at that, and Mark may be able to recall the conversation, but it may have been the kind of the closest location that's accessible with grades.
It is in front of the building, which would be the west side of the building. There is a significant little hill. The double doors at the main entry has a large concrete pad, and it's level. And indeed, that handicapped parking area would be the closest accessible area or location for that parking space.
Okay, so would someone in a wheelchair be using that southern door then to get in?
No. I mean, to the double door, the main door, and there's a large concrete pad in front of the main double door, and it's flat all the way to the corner, and it's a very small building. So you're talking about maybe 10 feet, 15 feet.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
It's
so
not-
everybody goes
not a-
through that west door.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a very tiny little building.
Okay, so it's a concern we've had, and we're going to be talking about changing the code, and this is in there, but it's not in there yet, though we've added it to the last many applications that shared a building with other uses, and that's that the kind of interior walls that are shared with other tenants go all the way up to, I think in this case, the floor of the second floor, to prevent people from climbing over and robbing you. What's the situation in this building? Do your interior walls go all the way up to the floor of the second floor?
Yes, in order to meet code approval, there is no drop ceiling. It's a solid lid, and all the walls go all the way up to the ceiling.
There's no drop ceiling. Okay.
There's no drop ceiling. It's a solid lid.
So you have a bathroom, and the restaurant there. Is that a restaurant? It's like a taco shop?
Yes.
Okay. So they have one. Your bathrooms back up to each other essentially. Does that wall go all the way up to the ceiling?
Yes. All the walls go all the way up to the ceiling.
Okay. And then looking at your this is just for retail, but the business cards, kind of your sample ID and so on, says cultivation and dispensary.
We intend to have a small cultivation operation.
So you'll be coming back at some point for that?
Yes,
Okay.
in a couple of months, probably.
Okay. Okay, so that's why there's a lot of comments in your state thing about that. So okay. Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you. That's all I've got, Crystal.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Gates, you had some questions about the use of Google.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just struck me when I heard, I think Mr. Yelly was saying that they measured separation distance by using Google. And I guess I thought that we have a ArcGIS mapping application that the municipality usually relies on for these kinds of things. That's, I guess I assumed, more accurate or reliable. So could you just describe why we used Google Maps or instead of the ArcGIS municipal application, mapping application?
This is Sean. Dean, I just check Google first but I did use the marijuana mapping application, which does list all the protected uses as a backup. So just a cursory check, I kind of look at Google just to see, and then from there go to the mapper. So that was used, and that is the program that we use.
Okay, did you feel Google was a reliable mapping, application? This kind of thing.
It's more of just kind of the street viewer to see what everything looks like and kind of the quick aerial. It's just kind of like the first go-to, and then over to the actual mapping application.
Okay, I mean, double checking sounds great. Thanks, Mr. Odell.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, I have Mr. Constant in the queue. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. Having heard mention of both the two types of licenses, it probably isn't one of these cases because the application isn't in any way before us. But I recall when we licensed a facility on Arctic that when a facility had two licenses, one that they were doing now and one they were going to do later, that we figured out some way to ensure that in case between now and then a protected use crops up, this license would be able to continue to expand into their proposed use. And I'm wondering if this fits in that context, or if we just don't think about it again until it formally comes back before us.
So through the chair, this is Ryan Yell. I can speak to that. I believe the case you're referring to, Mr. Constant, was a phased approval for a marijuana cultivation facility. So they were already coming in and applying for approval of that use of marijuana cultivation. It wasn't granting tentative, or preemptive approval of a use. And what we did in that case is we brought it forward so that they had approval for the entire licensed premises area, but they were only developing a small portion of it in phase one, and then future phases were directed, or approval discretion was given to the planning director for those future phases.
Right, and so that raises just that very interesting consideration, because I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, that any future license would be within this licensed facility. I guess that's a question to the applicant. When you expand into your cultivation, is it going to be within the same footprint of the current licensed facility or proposed licensed facility, or will it be an expansion into another unit of the building?
It's right upstairs in the same building.
In the same building, under the same footprint.
Correct, and we are right now working on the on that application as we speak. It's not sometime down the road. It'll probably be within the next month or two.
Okay, so this may be something we look at for future issues as well in terms of our review of the licensing codes. Just, I wonder if we grant within the same footprint a protected use even across types of licenses, right? If they don't expand beyond and into new. Anyhow, I'm just want to be sure we're not setting people up for failure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. For the record, I just want to note that Mr. Dunbar has joined us and probably did so about 5 minutes ago. So anyway, next in the queue, Mandy, you had something.
Thank you. So I checked with our agenda team about correcting some of the clerical errors. They said that we will need to do like floor amendments or an S version. They're minor, so I don't think an S version is necessary, but I'll work with planning and we'll get some floor amendments to correct those and then be in contact with you guys for that. Just wanted to let you know.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. So are there any other questions then from the members? Okay, and then Mr. Hall, unless you had something else you wanted to tell us or talk to us about, any final comments? It's not necessary. I thought I'd let you know. You went.
Sure. No, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so I appreciate you know, the questions and this opportunity to answer any questions or concerns that people might have. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what would be the will of the committee on a recommendation for this retail establishment?
Move to recommend approval with the amendments as discussed.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second, Weddleton.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to forwarding this with a recommendation to approve? And I hear none. So this will go forward to the assembly, and Mr. Hoff, for your benefit, the entire assembly will be voting on this on Tuesday. If you choose to listen in, that would be great, just in case any of the other members on the assembly that aren't here have any additional questions. But at this point, the committee will recommend that it be approved. So thank you very much for joining us on this. So.
Thank you. I can go offline now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Okay, we're going to move on to the proposed changes to Title 10.80. And it looks like we have a more updated version from Mr. Gates. So do you want to jump in on this, Mr. Gates, and kick us off here on this one, just to get us back on track with where we're at with these revisions, please?
Well, Krista, I wonder if we could do it a little different.
Oh, okay. You have an idea.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, we were working off a list of 30 items last meeting. I don't think we quite finished them. I think we had the last 4.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to that then and continue on that list. And so it sounds like specifically, Mr. Weddleton, you might want to jump in on that right off the bat. So do you want to start with that last, or that fourth to the last?
Yeah, and my notes may not be crystal clear on this but number 27 was just, and this was the list that I don't think we distributed for this meeting, but it was from last meeting. And it was just kind of threw everything in one big list that we discussed over the last few months. So we gotten through most of it. So 27 was increased fees for NOVs and with escalating fees. And we may have talked about that, but and I think, but I didn't have a note that we did. But I think the idea that came from code enforcement on that.
Mr. Weddleton, let's hold up 1 second just to make sure that all the members know the list that we're talking about. I mean, I've got my copy here, but I want to make sure everybody knows kind of what we're looking at. And Mandy, can you tell me if this is still posted on the committee website?
It is. It's posted on the website under last meeting. We didn't put it under this one, but if the public or the members want to go to the CEDC webpage, it's posted on for the meeting of the 3rd.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, and I just now see in the chat that you added that in there, but just to make sure everybody knows where that's available, that would be probably helpful at this point. So, okay. So if anybody needs more help with that, please, pipe up here. But John, go ahead with 27 then, please.
So I guess it's just a discussion on this one is basically send it to Jack Frost and his team and say, what do you guys want to do?
Right.
Unless someone has a better idea.
Okay. Were there any comments then in regard to what we might do with fees? I see somebody in the chat here. Dean Gates. Go ahead, Mr. Gates.
Well, I just agree with Mr. Weddleton that we need to put our heads together with either Jack Frost or someone from his team, but starting with Jack Frost, to go through the list and probably I mean, I think that there needs to have sort of a little work group to look at that and then come back with the recommendations of what should be increased. Because I don't think, I suppose some of them should have some graduated systems, where it ratchets up for repeated violations, but some of them maybe not. So I think that needs a little work. So I don't know if anyone from code enforcement is here, but I suggest that Mandy, Ryan, myself, Jack Frost, I guess if a member wants to join, meet to go through the list, or send it to code enforcement, they go through the list and they meet with us to go through the drafting changes.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. And then just asking members if they've got any suggestions on that, maybe to forward those to you and probably Mr. Frost as well, to kind of get that conversation started. Let's see, Mr. Constant, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
If there's other input on this topic, we can stay, but I have another topic under this agenda item. So if there's any more on the penalties, no. So okay, the state just changed their rules on breastfeeding. Do we need to add something in this to address that?
Through the chair, this is Mandy. That has been added to the draft AO that Dean has been working on with the clerk's office. So any of the state reg changes that have been coming through, we've been adding to that draft AO as we get them. So they're going to be part of this whole package. So yes, that one is in.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Good clarification on that one. Okay, so we're going to move on. Oh, go ahead. Is that Mr. Deans? Go ahead, or Mr. Gates? Go ahead.
Madam Chair. Yeah, the new section that just emulates the state's language is on the bottom of page 36 to 37 of the draft AO that was sent. And it's section 1087.12. And thank you, Mandy, for drafting that up.
Great, thank you. Okay, then we should probably move on then to number 28, the departmental review. Mr. Weddleton, did you have some specific comments on this one?
Yeah, well, this one is something that Meg had championed. And I think it's accepted that maybe not precisely this wording, but I think this had actually been chewed on a bit and got here. Meg, did you want to talk on this?
I'm looking to see if oh yeah, she's still on with us, but
she may be coaching a student.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So temporarily unavailable. Okay, well, let's hold on to that one then, because she does have the language there. Yeah, I'd like her to speak on that just to really clarify what she wants to get at there. So let's hold off on that one. Let's see who else is in the queue here. So Mr. Yell, I might have missed you on something. So go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. It was just on item number 28, but if we're going to hold off on discussion on this item, then I can hold my comments till later.
Okay, unless it will help promote some of the discussion right now. You know, I don't want to miss this or put it off if we can't. If we do have something that we can make some progress on with it, that would be good. But your call, Mr. Yell, if you want to comment, fine. If not, we'll wait. And actually, I do see Zolatel back on here, so maybe we can let her go ahead, and you can just stand by, Mr. Yell, and we'll get your comments after Meg gets us going here. So, Ms. Zolatel, do you want to comment on this number 28? Believe this is one that you were interested in or authoring. So.
Thank you. Sorry, I did have to step away for a second. Last day of school, guys, and then it's winter break. I have to tell you, never been so excited for break in my life. Okay, yeah. So the idea here was that if there was, so this harkens back to before where we had the idea of someone asserting a protected land use, that we need to make the land use determination process available and known to all involved, so that it doesn't come up when we're well down the road. And I'm open to whatever makes the most sense in terms of actually implementing something like that and utilizing the current processes. But it seemed like in that prior instance, folks weren't, that an informal land use determination or an email wasn't sufficient enough, and that there were some questions about that. And really, if folks feel the need to escalate it to a formal land use determination with all of its appellate and due process options, would really like them to be able to do that sooner rather than later, and before it necessarily comes to the assembly, so that that question is resolved.
Okay, so this is just a matter of making notification so that people are aware.
Yeah, if everyone thinks that's sufficient, I feel like that would have remedied the prior instance, that if the applicant or that once the applicant is aware that someone's making a request or is asserting a protected land use, that we start to get down that path as quickly as possible. And I'm sure Ryan, Mr. Yell probably has some really specific thoughts about the mechanics of that.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Solotel. Okay, Mr. Yell, yes, we want to give you a chance to chime in here.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this, I haven't quite honed in exactly what I feel like an appropriate amendment would be. I do think that an amendment like this would be helpful, but pointing out the mechanics of how it's actually going to operate is a good question, because to us, I mean, we make informal use determinations multiple times daily. I mean, we have people calling us, hey, I'm interested in opening up this business in this location. Where can I do it? And what land use category do I fall under? So to us, we don't really see the need to codify informal use determination, because it implies a separate land use entitlement that's somehow different from a use determination. When we already have use classification request as a land use entitlement that has its own application, it has its own fee. And also it gets into kind of this interesting situation where, we cannot compel somebody to come in and do a use classification request. If they assert that they are something, we go on our best research that's available to us if they do not submit a detailed business narrative. So it, yeah, I guess kind of fumbling over my words here, but I'm not entirely sure exactly how to proceed with this so that we're not creating additional conflicts in code, and we're also not creating additional conflict with just our current necessary day-to-day processes and doing our jobs. But as far as notifications go, the applicant's required to send out the same notification that we do when they conduct their community meeting prior to even submitting their applications. So any protected land use that's within 500 feet of the petition site should be getting notification that there's an intent to open up a marijuana business near them prior to an application even being submitted. Now, granted, with marijuana, there's a lot of things that have to happen prior to that due to state regulation. They have to have a location before even submitting a state application, and I understand that. So exactly finding out what the magic pill is for this, I don't know if I'm 100% on that or confident that the current wording would be the correct way to go.
Okay, thank
But that's
you.
all I have initially.
No, great. That's okay. That's good because that will help spur this conversation on. And I've got 2 people in the queue on this. So Ms. Solotel, you're first.
Okay, thanks. So that helps. So if we pretend that this has come up, so I'm pretty concrete in my thinking, that the applicant has sent out their notices to everyone within 500 feet, or the notices have gone out, and there isn't, when the applicant's looking for a location, there isn't an obvious protected land use. But when the notices come out, we get some entity that says, "Hey, wait, I think we're a protected land use. Are we?" They call up planning. They get an informal use determination. Whether or not that gets, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if someone does that, when does that get communicated to the applicant? That's one piece, so that they can, know that information, especially where it wasn't obvious. Because my guess is that an applicant in looking for a location takes this information into consideration. And then once that informal use determination has been made, and someone believes they're protected land use, like at what point are we letting the applicant know so that they can either challenge or get more information about that assertion, so that it doesn't come up, again, when it's, in the approval stages before the body. So it's those particular mechanics. I understand you all are making informal use determinations all the time, but it's more than making sure that if someone is asserting a protected land use, that we get notice out to the applicant in some way so that it can start to be resolved, or the applicant can determine that they're just not in the right spot.
Okay, I think that's for you, Mr. Yell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Altel, so if we get knowledge that there is somebody who is asserting that they're a protected land use within that separation distance, we'll go ahead and work with the applicant that day. I mean, immediately once we find that out, and we'll let them know, okay, here's the situation. We're going to investigate it. We'll let them know, okay, maybe this changes the nature of your application. You might have to apply for variance to encroach in the separation distance. There's only been one instance where I believe somebody had initiated a state application, and then there was somebody who was asserting that they were protected land use. It turned out that they weren't, but I would say the 99% of the time, applicants are working very closely with me, very closely with the state, and if they have a representative, they're working with the representative during that property acquisition process, making sure that there aren't any protected land uses nearby, that they can take care of that. And they've been very diligent about that. But as far as like notification, it's really just one-on-one with the applicant. There really aren't any mailers that are sent out or anything like that, if that's kind of what the question was.
Okay, Madam Chair, may I just really quickly?
Please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to formalize that notice. I feel like that's an important piece. So I understand you guys work closely, but I think giving the applicant some kind of written notice that says, hey, there's a protected land use, you know, and here are your options, would probably address my concern, so that the applicant receives some really like concrete notice and is aware of their options. Because I think in that last case, that's maybe where things got a bit muddled. And that would just be really clear. And I understand it doesn't come up a lot, but as it can come up. And I think it was really, in that one instance, was really controversial and really time consuming. So if we just make sure that the path to resolve it is clear through notice, and providing the options to the applicant, I feel like that will address my concerns.
And through the chair, this is Ryan. Perhaps if it's a notification issue and providing more of a formal memo to the applicant, you know, maybe we could resolve that as just a simple department policy rather than doing a formal code amendment. Because the only thing I'm concerned about with a code amendment like this is that it does nothing but muddy the waters and creating an additional entitlement that doesn't exist in code. When we already have, you know, use classification request and the fact that we can't compel somebody to do one. So if it's a simple notification, perhaps just a change in department policy that we send them, you know, a formal memo indicating that may suffice and be a good path forward.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I was going to say, we can discuss the difference between putting it in code or not. I prefer if there's going to be a notice to the applicant given in a certain instance, that it just be in code. So it's just very clear that they can expect it. That's my preference, but I'm willing to be persuaded otherwise. But that's where I start.
Well, thank you, Ms. Zolotel. You definitely explained the point behind this, your reason for including it. And so anyway, so maybe we will sit on this one for a little bit longer as well. But I do have Mr. Gates in the queue, so he may have some a little more guidance for us. Go ahead, Mr. Gates.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm not sure I have guidance, but maybe just a little background illumination. I wrote up this language when Ms. Zolotel talked about the issue and so forth. And I had sent it to Mr. Yell, and we haven't actually incorporated it like Mr. Yell said. This language isn't actually perfect yet. We need to wordsmith a little more. And unfortunately, it isn't in the draft for the Title 21 changes yet. But I just wanted to point out that this isn't our final language, but it will address the concerns, as well as maybe some modification to the planning department's practices, like Mr. Yell just mentioned. But I think by next meeting, I mean, Mr. Yell and I have had a little bit of email tag on this, but I've actually gotten to dig into it. So the next meeting, I think you will see some change in language and more on this issue. I just wanted one other point, that first few words of that line that's in bold here, if any party of interest. And so it's not only about the applicant being aware and all that, but also the surrounding property owners with the 500 feet that get notice. Those are parties of interest. And party of interest is a defined term in Title 21. So we will look at this a little more and come back next meeting. So my apologies that we haven't finished this, cleaning it up yet.
Great, thank you, Dean. That helps. I know a lot of this is just a continual work in progress right now. So there's just a lot here to be covered. So, okay, if there's not anything else on this particular one, we'll move on to 29. We've got about 15 minutes left to this meeting today. So this one was just a conversation about whether an accessory religious use should be a protected use. And there was a new definition. So are we incorporating that new definition? I don't know exactly where we're at on this particular one. So whoever is asking about this, if you want to chime in at this point and clarify the question, that'd be great. Or Dean, I guess if you've got any more information on particular on this one, more than welcome to comment. Anybody?
Yeah, Crystal, this one it kind of springs from where 28 did as well, with the Alaska Sense and the Hope Center. And in the analysis of the formal use determination, I think Michelle had some wording there saying because it's an accessory use, it's not that accessory uses are not protected uses, is my recollection. And I didn't put the wording here. I might have it somewhere, but maybe Ryan could address that. Did you recall that, Ryan? If there was some clear wording on that?
I can't recall the exact wording, but I believe it was along the lines of the accessory use that was identified is not an identified protected land use in code, so therefore it wasn't protected. I don't believe it really kind of differentiated between primary and accessory, but I could be wrong on that since I don't have the memo in front of me. But overall, with this question, you could designate accessory uses as protected land uses. With a little bit of caution on that, though, I'm just recognizing that whatever accessory use that is, it could be a business that says, oh yeah, I do that for 2 hours a week, and that's an accessory use, and now I'm protected. It has the potential to maybe open up a can of worms that wasn't intended.
Well, if I could, Crystal,
go ahead, because I've got some questions on that too, but go ahead, John.
Okay, so the other side of that, Ryan, is perhaps we need to make more clear when we say what our protected uses are, and maybe within the planning world, we mean protected primary uses, but not accessory uses. And for most people, they won't know that difference. And I think that really came clear with the Hope Center thing to all of us. So should we make more? I guess that's a decision to make. Should we include some of these things, including accessory uses? Or make clear where we say protected uses, say accessory uses are not protected. Looking for advice from Ryan and Dean.
Yeah, and through the chair, I think that's something that's worth some. Yeah, and through the chair, I think that's something that's worth some exploration. Differentiating between principal and accessory uses, and I think that's a valid discussion item, and we can look at that further.
Yeah, I would appreciate it. That's where my questions were going to, Mr. Weddleton. So I do think we need some definitions and clarification rather than relying on a letter that happened to be written on a more specific, on a different and more specific case. But anyway, so we probably need to pursue that one a lot more. But I do have Mr. Constant in the queue on this, so go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, for my part, I'm going to strongly advocate that we clarify that those ancillary or secondary uses are not protected, because it's easy enough to just call every location this or that. And so for my part, I'm good to clarify that there is a difference, but I would want us to lean towards the primary use being the protected use as opposed to other kind of ancillary uses.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I think we're tracking on this. Mr. Dunbar.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I agree with Mr. Constant on this issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just for points of putting something on the record, there's a couple of comments in the queue. Mandy just informed me that our meeting is actually scheduled till, well, I have it scheduled till 11, Mandy, so I'm not sure if we're real, and I think there's a difference today because we have a budget meeting at 11:10. So anyway, so I think we are still on for just 11 o'clock today, not 11:30. But anyway, the other comment that was in there is Jana Weltzine put in that AMCO is working on its own fee schedule and fine chart, so we might be able to coordinate with some of that. And it looks like Dean said yes, we'll talk with Jane on that. So just kind of letting you know what some of the comments were in the chat. Any other comments on this particular number 29 here? Okay, so we are on until 11, so we have 10 minutes. So I think we can get through this and have a couple minutes for audience participation as well. Okay, so number 30, require a written warning on the business fronts of all dispensaries which cautions non-U.S. citizens of the consequences of consuming marijuana. And I remember a little bit about this. I'm not sure who brought it up, but anyway, just the idea of putting signage on some of the front doors or windows of dispensaries. So anybody want to comment on this one?
Yeah, I could, Crystal.
Go ahead.
This came from an email from someone who works with immigrants, and it's from a while ago, but I think, I'm not sure if we did it or not, but Forrest may have been involved. There was an addition to the sign that said military personnel stay out or something similar. And I think that triggered this email, and this person goes, well, you need to tell immigrants as well, because it could, because it's federally illegal, they could lose their whatever immigration status because they went and bought marijuana.
Okay, so we have something that we're going to be putting in the revisions on that vein. So Mr. Dunbar, go ahead.
Yeah, two things on this. I think I'm probably opposed to this, actually, because there's just so much subtlety to this. For example, you could be, I'm trying to think, there are some of our territories where I don't think you are technically a U.S. citizen, but you're obviously not going to get deported for this. And I don't know, I just think it would take a lot of research. In the military case, I don't remember if we mandated signage. I thought we had just prohibited advertising and deals targeted at active duty folks, but I could be mistaken. That was literally the first ordinance I ever put in, and so maybe Jana could explain where that requirement, or if there is a requirement for that kind of signage. But I think this is motivated by a good thought, but I think that I think it would take a lot of research, and in general, we don't wade into federal immigration law for pretty obvious reasons. And I guess the other major distinction, right, is that if you serve in the military, as I do, you get tested for drugs regularly, as I do. And I don't think there is a program to, for someone who's legally residing in the United States, I don't think that there is widespread drug testing. But anyway, that's my initial thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, so my immediate gut reaction was to visualize a sign that says immigrants not welcome. And I don't want any part of that.
Thank you. Mr. Gates.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment similar to what Mr. Dunbar said. This seems a bit like a slippery slope to get down. In some ways, it's good intentions, definitely, but this is basically saying in some way that there should be signage warning people to protect their own status, but that's not really an obligation, right, of the government, I guess, or us, or the marijuana retail stores to have signs warning everybody to protect your status as an immigrant or military or whatever. And that's part of our freedoms, to people do what they want and should worry about their own status and know what they need to do in order to retain their status as, an immigrant on a visa or active duty military or so forth. So, and I guess, there's probably some other sort of status or positions, first responders um, or others who maybe get drug tested. Do we need another sign for them? So that's why I say a slippery slope. So I'm just a little concerned about trying to do this, as well as adding to the sign clutter. But those are just my opening thoughts. And it's not a bad idea, but I think that non-US citizens, who are here legally on some immigration status, should be aware of what that status requires them to do or refrain from doing. And if that's refrain from consuming marijuana, they should be aware of that from a different office and different source, and protect their status as they see fit, rather than the signs everywhere. Anyways, that's just sort of my thought, but that's not a legal advice. I just see it though as from a legal perspective, a slippery slope to go down.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree with Mr. Gates. I think we're getting into, federal jurisdictions here, and I don't believe this is totally necessary. I understand where the thought came from, and I remember seeing this email a time or two before, but I just think it's just I don't know, a bridge too far, we'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Okay, we do have a comment in the chat from Jana Weltzine that says signage regarding non-U.S. citizens is not required by AMCO, nor is signage required warning military for the state or muni. So anyway, this is kind of an interesting question, and I do remember this comment coming up and wondering if that was, to the benefit of somebody that might be at risk. But if we really can't do it, we can't do it. And it sounds like there's a lot of reasons not to. And I would say there's a tendency when you put a whole bunch of language on a sign and a door, nobody's going to read it anyway. And I hate to say that, but that's kind of the reality of it. If it's too much information with a lot of legalese, it will be ignored. So let's see. Jane Sawyer put a comment in too that said Jana's comment about non-U.S. citizens and military sign is correct. So any other comments on this particular item?
This is John. I wouldn't support it either, as for many of the reasons stated. In addition, that these signs get too many and then get ignored.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Agreed. Okay, well, we made it through our list of 30, and I just kind of made a note here too about the breastfeeding one, which we believe the state is handling, and so we will just be following suit with that language anyway. Anything else that we want to add to our list that we won't discuss right now, but might put on there for next meeting? Try to wrap this up here in a few minutes. So, okay, so not seeing any other comments or at least requests to talk here in the chat. So let's, if there's no objection, let's just move on to audience participation in these last couple of minutes.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, introduce yourself. You have, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, this is Eugene Carl Haberman. I started my timer. Number one, at the last committee meeting, I believe it was, I compared how you operated your meetings before COVID, where there was meetings were packed with a lot of people in the Elmore building area, and early in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was audience introduction, and so people knew who was present, and there was also involvement in that before you made a vote, you heard from the public before each vote, or had any comments. And today you had a vote on an issue, and there was no place for public comment. Also, you've referred to the website, community website site for the committee. Yesterday was one item shown as attachment. Today it was shown 3 attachments, but it was noted in this meeting today, that you referred to people to look at other dates for the information that's for this meeting. And I wouldn't think you would want to do that at an Anchorage Assembly meeting as a way to connect the people on information. So I discourage you doing that again. Also, the last thing is you're going to have a work session tomorrow. I guess it's on the elections for a half hour. That's kind of short, and I'm concerned also that the work sessions you do have don't have any place for public comment, and of all issues is dealing with the election. And then in closure, I'll leave with this concern. At the last regular assembly meeting, I was remote. I signed up for telephonic for the initial. I didn't get connected for telephonic for the first part, and in the final part of final audience participation, no one was called for final audience participation. You only called people from the people that were in the room, and I don't recall you calling anyone else for audience initial audience participation remotely in that scenario. So you got a problem, and I alert you, there's going to be bad weather Tuesday night. It's going to be very hard for people to be there, but connect with those people that are signing up, and thank you very much. With 31 seconds to spare.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. So, well, if there is no objection, I will adjourn this meeting. Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.